The air inside the terminal tasted like bitter cold coffee and diesel exhaust. Officer Reeves leaned his wide frame over the plastic counter, his teeth flashing in a slow, cruel grin. He took Maya's small, faded wrist, his fingers clamping down like rusted steel. "A black woman? Green beret?" Reeves laughed, his voice bouncing off the concrete walls, sharp enough to turn every head in the crowded concourse. The low hum of the airport died instantly. "Little girl, your people don't wear those uniforms. You come up with a better lie before I haul you out to the squad car." Maya didn't pull away. She didn't scream. She only stood taller, her small shoulders square against the crushing weight of his gaze. Her thumb reached down, pressing firmly into the scratched brass challenge coin tucked into the side pocket of her canvas bag. The metal was worn smooth by years of hands holding on for dear life. "You don't have to believe me for it to be true," she said, her voice dropping to a whisper that cut clean through the silence. Then the small phone in her pocket buzzed against her hip. "Mom, parking now. 4 minutes." Reeves chuckled, shaking his head as he tapped his heavy brass badge. He thought he was the only power in the room. He had no idea what was already moving through the glass doors behind him. 10 years earlier, long before Maya stood under the flickering fluorescent lights of Terminal B, she learned what it meant to wait in the dark. She grew up in a small, drafty home in rural Georgia. It was a house defined by the silence left behind by absent boots. While other children played in the yard with their fathers, Maya watched her mother, Captain Sarah Carter, pack heavy tactical gear into dark green duffel bags. Sarah was a woman carved from granite and quiet faith, raised in a town that told black girls they were meant to serve others from behind a counter, not from behind a weapon. Sarah was a pioneer in a world that never wanted her to exist. She fought twice as hard to clear every obstacle, pushing through elite physical tests, breaking through invisible barriers to earn a place in the military's most secretive, high-risk elite units. But to Maya, she was simply the woman who smelled of laundry soap and clean rain, the woman who knelt on the kitchen floor before every deployment to hold Maya's face in her strong, calloused hands. "Maya, look at me," Sarah would whisper, pressing that small brass coin into her daughter's palm. "People will judge you by the color of your skin before you ever open your mouth. They will try to make you feel small so they can feel big. You hold your head up. You carry dignity like armor. No one can take that from you unless you hand it over." For months at a time, Sarah would disappear into shadow operations across the globe. Maya survived on yellowed postcards, late-night phone calls that lasted 30 seconds, and the memory of her mother's voice. She learned to wear her dignity like an invisible suit of chainmail. She learned that real strength doesn't roar. It endures. On this humid Tuesday afternoon, Maya was 19, traveling back home from college for the summer. Her canvas bag was heavy with books, but her heart was light. Her mother was finally returning from a long, classified deployment overseas. They were supposed to meet at the baggage claim. When Maya walked toward the security desk to ask for directions to the lower level, Officer Reeves stood guard near the checkpoint. He was a veteran patrolman with a heavy jaw, a sharp tongue, and a decades-long habit of exerting absolute control over anyone he deemed lesser. To Reeves, a young black girl traveling alone with a worn canvas bag was an easy target for a random search. "Step aside, miss," Reeves snapped, his arm swinging out to block her path. "Bag on the table, right now." Maya complied immediately, keeping her posture calm and composed. "Is there a problem, officer?" "The problem is you're moving fast, looking nervous, and asking too many questions," Reeves grunted, unzipping her bag and dumping its contents onto the cold counter. Books, highlighters, and a small framed photograph of Maya and her mother rolled across the laminate surface. Reeves picked up the photo. It showed a young Maya smiling beside a woman wearing full military fatigues, a green beret resting proudly on her head, and a chest covered in prestigious medals. Reeves let out a loud, mocking scoff. "What's this? A costume party?" "That's my mother," Maya said quietly, her voice steady despite the prickle of tears behind her eyes. "She's a special forces officer. She's picking me up." That was when the laughter started. That was when Reeves looked around for an audience, using his authority to crush a child's pride just to pass the time. The terminal was dead quiet now. Passers-by halted, their eyes darting between the towering police officer and the young girl pinned beneath his hard glare. Some looked away out of fear. Others pulled out their phones, watching the familiar, heartbreaking script play out in real time. Reeves took a step closer, towering over Maya, his hand resting casually on his leather holster. He wanted her to cry. He wanted her to shrink, to apologize, to beg for him to let her go. He wanted the satisfaction of complete surrender. "You tell your little fairy tales somewhere else," Reeves sneered, grabbing her canvas bag by the strap and throwing it onto the floor, scattering her belongings across the concrete. "Pick that up, clear out of my terminal, or you're spending the night in a cell for disorderly conduct." Maya looked down at her books scattered across the dirty floor. Her hands trembled, but her spirit remained unbroken. She slowly dropped to one knee, her fingers wrapping around her mother's brass coin. She remembered the words whispered in the kitchen long ago. "They will try to make you feel small so they can feel big." She didn't shed a single tear. She gathered her things, stood up, and squared her shoulders. Outside the floor-to-ceiling glass windows of the airport terminal, a deep, rhythmic thrumming began to echo through the air. The heavy glass panes started to vibrate in their metal frames. The sound grew louder, a deep, mechanical thunder that rattled the light fixtures overhead. People in the terminal turned away from the confrontation and looked out toward the tarmac. 3 dark military SUVs, escorted by state police cruisers with flashing red and blue lights, pulled directly onto the passenger curbside, bypassing all civilian traffic. Behind them, hovering low in the gray afternoon sky, the distinct, deafening chop of a black military transport helicopter shook the foundation of the building. The heavy double doors of the terminal slid open with a sharp hiss. A tall woman stepped through the threshold. She wore a crisp, immaculate dress uniform, her chest decorated with rows of combat ribbons, a Bronze Star, and the unmistakable, rare insignias of High-Level Special Forces Command. Flanking her were 2 senior military officers and an armed escort, their polished boots striking the floor in perfect, unified sync. The entire terminal seemed to hold its breath. The quiet hum of the crowd evaporated into absolute silence. Captain Sarah Carter walked straight past the stunned bystanders. Her eyes were fixed on one person and one person only. She didn't look at the flashing lights, she didn't look at the crowd, and she certainly didn't look afraid. She walked with the unstoppable force of a storm, her boots coming to a halt directly beside her daughter. Sarah took in the scene in a single fraction of a second. The scattered papers on the floor, the open bag, Maya's steady posture, and the arrogant, pale face of Officer Reeves, whose smile had completely vanished, replaced by a cold, sickly shock. "Is there an issue here, officer?" Sarah asked. Her voice wasn't raised, but it carried the weight of absolute authority, forged in fire and quiet command. Reeves swallowed hard, his throat suddenly bone dry. His hands twitched near his belt, his eyes darted frantically over the medals pinned to her chest, realizing instantly the magnitude of his mistake. The power dynamic in the room had shattered in an instant. "Ma'am, I was just conducting a routine security check," Reeves stammered, taking an instinctive half-step backward. Sarah looked at the officer's badge, then down at her daughter's canvas bag, and finally directly into Reeves's eyes. "My daughter carries herself with honor. She knows who she is, and she knows where she comes from. You would do well to learn the same respect for the people you are sworn to protect." Reeves could not meet her gaze. He looked at the floor, his face burning red under the watchful eyes of the entire terminal. Without another word, he stepped back, yielding the hallway completely. Maya picked up her bag, placed the brass coins safely back into her pocket, and took her mother's side. They didn't gloat, they didn't shout, they simply walked together toward the exit, heads held high, leaving behind a crowd that would never forget the lesson taught in that terminal. Dignity is never given by those in power, it is owned by those who refuse to let it go.